Hi, welcome to Wallace Branch Storytime, and this week we are going to be reading The Art of Miss Chu by Patricia Polacco. I discovered how much I loved art the summer I spent with my grandmother and father in Michigan. Grandma was an artist. She drew and painted so beautifully. Grandma even told me that I was a natural artist, so I couldn't wait to take art at school next fall when I got home to California. I only had one problem left: tests. I just couldn't seem to pass them. I was back in California, and I loved school. Hard to believe, because once I had a lot of trouble reading, but not anymore. And I really liked my new teacher, Mr. Donovan. He was from Ireland and had sky blue eyes, a laugh that sounded like bells ringing, and a great Irish accent. He loved telling stories about his family back home, especially his father. Seemed like he always had a smile on his face. But he didn't have a smile the day he handed me back my first social studies test. I could feel my face get real hot when I unfolded it. An F again. The trouble was everyone read faster than me. Even though I knew the subject real well, I'd run out of time before I was finished. I started having stomach aches when I knew a weekly test was coming up. Mr. Donovan finally sat me down. "You know the subject, Trisha. What you need is extra time." He started giving me the time I needed, and sure enough, I began passing tests. But that didn't help my other problem. There was no real art class in my new school, just an art cart for 30 minutes once a week. Then one day, Mr. Donovan saw one of my drawings. He picked it up and hung it on the bulletin board. "Patricia, you have remarkable talent." All of the kids in class crowded up to look at the picture. "Man, oh man, can you draw?" Davy Mulford remarked. "Wow," Rick Scrub agreed. Even Neon Price, who never spoke to me because she was so popular, was impressed. I felt so proud. It wasn't a day later when Mr. Donovan told me about Miss Chu, the head of the high school art department. She had a special program for young artists on Tuesdays and Thursdays. When I showed her your drawing, she said she wanted you in her special class. Now, what would you be thinking of that, Miss Trish? I loved drawing. Sometimes when I was drawing, I'd forget to breathe. I danced on air all the way home that day. I couldn't wait to tell my mother. That first Tuesday, I'd never walked so fast in my life as I did to get to Miss Chu's on time. I had never seen a room like hers. Windows that went from ceiling to floor, giant easels at one end, rows of drying racks at the other, and paint everywhere. I didn't know anybody. Then Miss Chu breezed into the room. Her smock was so covered in paint that it was a painting in itself. She was tall and slender and spoke with a Chinese accent. "We have a new student today," she said, motioning toward me with her beautiful long fingers. "Her name is Teresa Barber." "Teresa?" "No," I wanted to shout. "My name is Patricia." But Miss Chu had already spun around and was passing out sketchbooks. From that day on, I was Teresa. I could barely understand Miss Chu's accent. "In this new class, we are going to learn to speak another language." She touched her heart. "The language of art." "Art? A language?" But Miss Chu went on. "It isn't unspoken, it is the language of emotion and images. But first," she told us, "you need to learn to see. See." She plopped down 2 salt shakers in the middle of the table. "Open your sketchbooks, take up your pencils, now draw the shakers. But first, young friends, see them. Don't look at them, see them." See how the light dances through the glass and makes a shadow pattern on the table? Yes, I saw it. Draw it, says Miss Chu. See how you can make your pencil line darker and lighter? She changed the line from dark to light. Yes, I saw that too. Yes, Teresa, Miss Chu said. You have it. Now, do your drawings again. Move the shakers off center. Let them run off the page on purpose. Make them bigger. Get the dancing light as it makes its shadow, she sang as she moved from table to table. She made us draw those shakers 6 times in 6 different ways. At the end of the day, she said, take your sketchbooks everywhere with you. First see, then draw. I couldn't wait. I took my sketchbook everywhere with me. On the bus home, I drew people sitting in their seats, even the bus driver. When I got home, I drew apples in a bowl, and my cat, Tilly. After dinner, I made my mom and my brother Richie sit so I could draw them. Ain't you got no homework? My brother groaned. This is homework, I said. Sit a little longer. I almost have you. The next day, after I had finished my assignment, I asked Mr. Donovan if I could make a drawing of his father, from the photo on his desk. I tried to remember everything Miss Chu told me. The next art class, Miss Chu called me up to her desk. Everyone else had handed in 1 or 2 sketches. I had done over 20. Your drawings are very good, her eyes smiled as if we had a secret. The cat, the apples, your mother, and your brother. You've captured every detail. I particularly like your use of negative space. Negative space? See this drawing, Teresa? What do you see? She held up a picture. 2 people looking at each other. Anyone could see that. Now, Teresa, instead of looking at the 2 faces, look at what is between them. Nothing. Wait. A tall stemmed cup. First you read negative space. Now you're reading the actual object. What an idea! I started looking at all of my own pictures for negative space. I was so happy, but a few weeks later, Mr. Donovan was called to the office. When he came back, his eyes were red. He couldn't seem to talk. He just stared out of the window. Finally, he spoke. "My dad died today," he whispered. Our whole class got out of our seats and tried to comfort him. He left for Ireland the next day. That is when we got Mrs. Spalding, a substitute. She never smiled. Worst of all, when I was taking my weekly test, she came up behind me and ripped the paper out from under my pencil. "Time's up," she barked. "But Mrs. Spalding, I'm not finished. Mr. Donovan always lets me have extra time because I'm not Mr. Donovan, and when I say you're finished, you are finished." Of course, I failed the test. That's when she got just plain mean. "Your time would be better spent studying for your tests instead of leaving this school to take art classes," she hissed, "and I'm going to see if I can make that happen." I tried to be brave and not tell Miss Chu, but in class, I began to cry and blurted out the threat that Mrs. Spalding had made. Miss Chu began to shake her head slowly. "Teresa," she said, "you say you can't read fast enough to finish your tests?" I nodded. "I watch you draw, and you begin by drawing what is in negative space." I remembered the picture of the 2 girls facing the glass. When you see a word, I think you don't see the letters at all at first. I think you first see the space around them, the pattern they make. "No wonder your reading takes you so much time," Miss Chu had said. I smiled, but I still wasn't quite sure what she meant. "I know someone I think can help, a reading specialist. No one is taking you from this class." I sprang to my feet and hugged her. "And tomorrow, Teresa, I am assigning you an easel. You are not only ready for painting, maybe you can be part of the high school spring art show. The following day, Mrs. Spalding announced we would take a timed citywide test that would determine what classes we would take next year. We'd have 45 minutes to finish. I only finished half the test. I knew my art class was over. But when I told Miss Chu, she said, "We'll just see about that." With my mom's permission, she would take me herself to see her friend, the reading specialist. After class, Miss Chu took me in her car. A convertible! As we drove off, the car sounded like it was growling, and I loved it when we drove by my school and Mrs. Spalding actually saw us. Dr. McClare played what seemed to be like 100 reading games with me, but I wasn't afraid. I knew he was trying to help. When he finally called Miss Chu in, he said, "You are spot on, Miss Chu. She reads patterns, not words. This takes time." Miss Chu wanted a meeting of all the players. Everyone came: the principal, Mrs. Spalding, Miss Chu, Dr. McClare, and my mother. Mrs. Spalding said the extra art class was simply a distraction. Trisha is drawing instead of studying. Miss Chu said, but she needs extra time to finish tests. All tests. When she and Dr. McClare said that I see things differently than most students, Mrs. Spalding scoffed, as if to say, what could an art teacher know about how a child learns? I don't tell you how to teach a child to draw. It was as if she didn't think art teachers were real teachers, that maybe art wasn't even a real class. Mr. Donovan came back exactly 2 days later. I couldn't help myself. I ran to him and hugged him. "I'm so glad you are back," I said. When someone else told him what Mrs. Spalding was trying to do, he got really red in the face. And I don't know what exactly happened after that day, but it seemed that Mrs. Spalding was no longer needed as a substitute, not in the whole school. So I went on to Miss Chu's class every Tuesday and Thursday. Of course, as soon as Mr. Donovan gave me extra time when I took my tests, I passed them with flying colors. I decided to use the sketch of Mr. Donovan's father for my first painting. When Miss Chu saw it, she just stood there and looked at it. "Teresa, this sketch is so full of emotion and love. You have most certainly learned the language of art. Mr. Donovan will be so moved." When I finished the painting, she said, "Teresa, this painting is going to be part of the art show. You will be the only exhibiting artist who isn't a high school student." I couldn't believe it. Me, in the spring art show? Later that day, Miss Chu asked me to stay after class. She handed me a package wrapped in bright red tissue paper and said softly, "We Chinese believe that red brings luck. And Teresa, remember this ancient Chinese proverb. Yesterday is history, tomorrow a mystery, today a gift. That is why it is called the present." She smiled. When I opened the gift, I caught my breath. It was one of Miss Chu's painting smocks. For me. I wanted to cry. When I looked into her eyes, she had tears too. Only a week later, I wore my new smock to the art show. Light was dancing off the mirror chandeliers. Our paintings were everywhere. I was so proud. Then I saw Mr. Donovan standing in front of my painting of his father. He couldn't speak. He took my hand and squeezed it. Miss Chu came up to us. She looked so radiant. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" she whispered to him. I looked at the two of them. Miss Chu was right. this moment was a present. It turned out to be the defining moment in my young life. I was set on a course to be an artist. It could be no other way, thanks to the art of the amazing Miss Chu. Alrighty. Thank you guys for tuning in today. I'd like to make it known that this week is actually Teachers Appreciation Week. So show your teachers lots of love, and I hope you all have an amazing week. All right. Thank you. Goodbye.